I'd like to call the Gurnee Village Board regular meeting of January 6th, 2020 to order. Roll call, please.
Hood.
Here.
Thorstensen.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Garner.
Here.
O'Brien.
Present.
Balmas.
Present.
6 present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Happy New Year. First meeting of 2020. So the first item of business is approval of the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please, Andy.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
6 ayes.
It came over to my
All
side.
right, motion carries. Patrick, please read the consent agenda into the record.
Item number 1, approval of the minutes from the December 16, 2019 meeting. Item number 2, approval of ordinance 2020-01, amending the Village of Gurnee Personnel Policy Manual, Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, and Workplace Transparency Act updates. Item number 3, approval of setting a bid date of January 27, 2020 for Police Department Phase 1 Carpet Replacement Project. Item number 4, approval of setting a bid date of February 10, 2020 for Depot Road Path Extension Project. Item number 5, approval of payroll for period ending December 20, 2019 in the amount of $845,378.37. Item number 6, approval of bills for period ending January 6, 2020 in the amount of $393,604.83.
Thank you, Patrick. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Motion by trustee Garner, second by trustee Balmas. Roll call, please.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
6 ayes.
Motion carries. We'll move on to petitions and communications. Our first one is a proclamation for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia on January 15, 1929, and has made a lasting impression as a key leader in the American civil rights movement during the 1950s and 1960s. In Dr. King's outstanding leadership, inspiring speeches, and diligent efforts on behalf of our nation's at-risk and minority population have encouraged millions of Americans to share his dream of civil equality and to bring this dream closer to reality. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day honors Dr. King's legacy each year in January and focuses on bringing people together to break down the barriers that have divided us as a nation. And the Village of Gurnee continues its commitment to the elimination of racism and all forms of discrimination, as well as the development of an inclusive society for all people. Now, therefore, I, Christina Kavark, Mayor of the Village of Gurnee, do hereby proclaim January 20th, 2020 to be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the Village of Gurnee. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by trustee Thorstensen, second by trustee Ross. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And we've adjusted our meeting schedule, so we will not have a meeting that night in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. That is all our petitions and communications to kick off the new year, so we'll move on to reports. And we have an update from Brian, our finance director, and I asked him to do this because there was some significant changes to pensions that impact us. So I thought it would be good if Brian walked us through what that means for our pension funds. So all yours.
Sure. So lately you've probably heard a lot about police and fire pension consolidation. I just wanted to walk through kind of how it happened, the timeline, and what the task force looked at and the recommendations that came out of it, and then a little bit about how it affects us. The governor formed a task force in February of 2019 to basically make recommendations on consolidating pension funds to be more efficient, to save taxpayer money. They looked at 3 subsets of plans, the suburban and downstate police and fire pension plans, I highlighted that because our police and fire have those plans, are included in that. Cook County and the City of Chicago pension plans, and then the Illinois statewide pension systems. The task force was made up of 10 members, and they really did a nice job of getting everybody at the table. There's fire, police, AFL-CIO, IML, governor's office representatives, and then some municipal representatives. And at the end, in October, they came out with a report, Governor, that included a couple recommendations. But before we get to that, I just wanted to walk through a few slides of what was included in their report and kind of how they got to the conclusion that they did. So they had two tables in the report. The first one there at the top, the first red box you can see, that is just the number of pension plans in each category. As you can see, there's almost 650 police and fire pension plans versus 9 for the Cook County and Chicago plans and 6 for the Illinois statewide. So the first metric out of the box that they look at kind of says there's a lot of plans and it's probably inefficient. So each one of those plans has their own investment managers, actuaries, auditors. So it was kind of low-hanging fruit there. The next box down includes the number of number of plans by size. As you can see, they're about 65% of them are under 20 million. So you have a lot of small plans that are part of 650 or almost 650 total. The next box down, the next red box, is where Gurnee Police and Fire fit in there. So that's just where we're slotted. Police is at 57 million, so they're in the bottom category there, and then fire at 42 million. So you can see we're amongst the larger ones in the state. The next kind of data set they took a look at was funding level, and they noticed that the majority of them were funded at 60% or under. 385 of them were under 60%. The statewide average was 55%, and just as a point of reference, our police is 72.1% and fire at 74.8%, the most recent actuary report. So based on other, everybody else in the state, we were pretty well funded. But the majority of them were under 60%, so that is something that the task force took a look at. And then finally, after you went through a lot of different plans that were small, and most of them underfunded or low funded, they also looked at what their 5-year average return was. And the downstate police and fire had the lowest at 5.06%. Everybody else was 6% or up. So a lot of small plans that aren't achieving the returns that they need. So it's pretty easy to come to the conclusion that they did. So after kind of crunching all the numbers, the task force came up with two recommendations. Consolidate suburban and downstate police and fire pension assets, plan assets only. That is hugely important because each police and fire pension board will still have their own individual board that determines benefits locally, but plan assets will be combined into 2 different plans, one for police, one for fire. And then the second recommendation they had was to continue to review everything else. So it was basically hit the low-hanging fruit, combine the ones that had almost 650 individual plans, and then continue to look at everybody else. So going from the report to legislation, the governor signed it December 18th, 2019. Senate Bill 1300 turned into Public Act 101-610. Consolidated two pension funds, or 2 investment funds, one for police, one for fire. Each one will still maintain individual sub-funds, so we will know Gurnee-specific information every year. It's just consolidated for investment purposes, similar to IMRF. Also in the legislation was no state sweeps, so the state can't come in and sweep funds to cover other funds if they're short somewhere. Obviously, it's same with the IMRF. And then to kind of get it across the finish line, they enhanced some benefits for Tier 2 members. They changed how the final average salary is calculated, increased the pensionable salary cap, and then added survivor benefits to take effect upon hire instead of vesting at the time you vested, so instead of waiting 10 years. Legislation also establishes a transition board. This will be established within 12 months, or it's already established. We know who the members are. I think they're just waiting for final approval of it. And this is in place for 12 months, kind of gets the infrastructure in place. After 12 months, they will be replaced by a permanent board that is done by election. Both of those are made up of a representative from the IML, 3 municipal representatives, 3 active members from each police and fire, and then to retirees. The transfer of assets, according to the legislation, must be done 30 months following the effective date. So we're in mid-2022 by the time we have to transfer all of our funds over to this. There's still a ton of unanswered questions. We'll get to that in a little bit. But those are the two boards that will be working through those questions. The permanent board has some work to do as soon as they get in place. They need to look at adopting actuarial assumptions. They do have in the legislation a 3-year smoothing for any spikes that, any actuarial assumptions that might cause spikes in local contributions. They've selected CIO, fiduciary council, a bunch of consultants, establish board rules, and then set an investment policy for the two funds. Local boards, as I said before, will still maintain authority over benefit determinations and training. The legislation does reduce the training requirements. Obviously, the fiduciary responsibility is now shifted, so you don't need to have that kind of training, or as much of it, I should say. So, just in conclusion, did it solve the underfunding problem? I think for smaller plans, it may help. I think we're in the sweet spot where it's probably not going to help us in the short term. We might see some administrative savings in the long term. One of the big things that will happen is once the permanent board decides on the actuarial assumptions, and we did a couple years ago, we had adjusted our pension policy to be as conservative as we could. But once they assume the actuarial assumptions, there's a 3-year smoothing period. So, for example, our assumed rate of return is 7%. If they decide to adopt 6%, that would spike our contribution. They smooth that over 3 years, so there's a little bit of a time frame there. But that's all up in the air still. We don't know what that is. And then administration of benefit distributions. Right now, we have a consultant that actually sends out benefit checks. Is that going to happen from the plan, the new fund, or are we going to have local funds here that still do that? So those are some questions still up in the air. And then obviously the actuarial assumptions again, what those end up being. So still a ton of unanswered questions on how this is going to work. But the infrastructure is in place right now. The temporary board is looking at it, and then the permanent board will be in place in 12 months and start making some decisions.
And this doesn't change the other law where we had to be funded at a higher level by, was it 2030 or 2040?
Yeah, so that will be, because there's a few different ways you can do it. There's 90% by 2040, 100% by 2033. That'll be decided when they decide the actuarial assumptions.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so that might change.
We decided on 100% by 2033. That's what we were funding at previously.
By 2030?
I think it was 2033.
33?
Yeah. But the state allows you to go out to 2040, which we chose not to.
All right, this has a big impact, so questions from the trustees? Trustee Thorstensen?
Hey, Brian, back on page 4, you had those Tier 2 benefit enhancements.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that do to our assumptions and, I guess, expectations?
So it will have, sorry, we're going back to this tier 2 right here. Mm-hmm. This will have an impact and likely raise the local contributions, but I don't think it'll be as significant as, say, 0.5% in the assumed rate of return. So, because it's just a longer time frame to view those over. But it'll definitely have an impact in increasing local contribution. Obviously, the more benefits you have, the more you have to fund. Now, could that be offset by higher investment returns, because now you have all this pooled money that you can invest in equities and invest in products that will offer a higher yield? Hopefully.
I was just looking for some tangible wins. Thanks.
Well, one of the wins, as Brian was just mentioning, was because our funds are so small, we're very limited where we can invest, and you really can't take advantage of some of the higher returns in the market. So by combining all of them, having it professionally managed on a large scale, will let the new fund probably get better returns than what we've been getting, especially the small. I mean, if I remember correctly, when we went through the legislation, there was one downstate fund that only had one person in it.
One person, yeah.
Well, how much can they be earning? So should level it out. Trustee O'Brien, you had a question?
I do see the benefit for the smaller ones. Is there a negative? We don't have a choice. It's the law. But is there a negative for Gurnee? We don't have a seat at the table in making decisions, right?
Certainly. In the short term, there's a cost to doing it. We don't know what that is yet. There's been estimates out there. But in the long term, we should definitely see some administrative savings. And, I think the way we're set up now, we're maxed out in equities based on what we can do legally anyway. So our returns have been fairly good, as an individual fund standpoint. So I don't think, we're not going to see a huge windfall from investment returns. But I think in the long term, we'll probably see some savings from the administrative side.
Thank you.
Trustee Balmas?
Are there, in this whole thing, are there any guarantees that the state can't come in and use that fund? I mean, that's
Yep.
what frightens me. I mean, the teachers are up in arms because they've used that money and there isn't any. What's
Yeah.
going to prevent them from coming in and doing that?
So they specifically put in the legislation that the state cannot touch it, can't sweep it.
Which they can change.
Yeah, but they could change that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's kind of like IMRF.
Yeah.
You have your separate account, your village account with them. It's segregated.
could they, I would assume they could change the law if they wanted to at some point, but there's political ramifications.
And Chicago would not be included in this. This is just.
This is
urban
just police and
downtown.
fire. Yeah, the irony of the whole thing is, the worst funded plans, they didn't have a recommendation for yet. So it was a situation where I think they just saw a large number of small funds and said, this is something that is a good, easy first step.
Trustee Garner?
Just for clarity, with 649 different plans, my guess is there are 649 different calculations per town.
Yeah, each one has their own actuary, their own auditor, their own consultant, investment advisor that they each pay for.
So will those calculations change? Is there going to be one calculation for all towns?
Correct. Yeah, once the.
So that sounds like, towns who had an inferior calculation or a calculation that paid out less will now receive more. Am I thinking through this right?
Yeah, if there were towns that were less conservative in their actuarial assumptions than we were, they would see a larger spike in the local contribution.
And on the reverse side of that, does that mean that, if you had a superior calculation or one that paid out more, would they receive less as a result of that?
In theory, their local contribution would go down, smoothed over 3 years, but.
And then the question becomes, how does a department like ours, how do we feel about that?
I would imagine
I mean, are we accepting this? I mean, is this something that?
we have no choice.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
but,
we supported the legislation. I mean, in the long run, it should give us better returns and professional management that we can't do here on our own locally. That we still will make the decisions about benefits and all that. That's all still under our control, but, when you're only managing 24 million versus an advisor that's managing 224 million, there's a big difference in returns.
oh, certainly, but are we reliable for smaller payouts to retirees, should that happen?
No, the benefits
Should the
haven't
village-
changed.
is
The
village
benefits,
Anyway,
the benefits haven't changed. What will change is, it could have an impact on our contributions. But what Brian was saying is we've been conservative, so that should work to our advantage, where we've been using 7% and getting close most of the time. But if you had a community that was assuming 9% and they'd only been getting 6%, they're going to get hit now
And that's what
with
I'm getting at.
with a flat, everybody's going to be similar on their contributions. So like IMRF, we don't get to change what we contribute. That's all factored out, we get notice, and that's what we have to contribute. So communities that were kind of not keeping up, they're going to get hit the hardest in this.
so we're not concerned with having to kick in more money?
I'm
As a
not.
village.
I think we're right in the sweet spot where it's not going to affect us a whole
Okay.
lot.
Yeah, and it doesn't require us to kick in for somebody who's underfunded, because all of these are little sub-funds. we'll all be under the same contribution.
Yeah, we're not contributing to underfunded plans. We're only contributing to what our individual plan says we need to.
Okay.
But it's important to understand, because this is something we discuss every budget period. So, other questions?
I just have one comment.
Trustee Ross?
My comment is also about the no state sweeps, so that, because of what happened with the teachers' funds, and so that as you're listening to them talking and so forth, and if there is ever a time of change, that we should really be against that, keep that no state sweeps in there.
Yeah.
That's where the IML, Mayor's Caucus, those things, they keep us fully informed of these developments, so. Anything else, Brian?
Nope.
All right, very good. Thank you for pulling that together on short notice.
Yep.
All right, any old business? No.
No.
Nope. All right, we'll move on to our first new business of 2020, approval of ordinance 2020-02, authorizing a professional service agreement to provide Gurnee's Got It promotional marketing services between the Village of Gurnee, Illinois, and Lynn G. Designs.
Sure. So Ellen has a quick PowerPoint she's going to run through. As you know, part of the Gurnee Mills agreement with Alpha Media to get them out there, we were provided a marketing package. That's something that is beyond the village's capabilities as far as putting that together and managing that. So looked for some outside assistance. They talked to a couple different firms, brought them in for interviews, and have brought forward a recommendation. But like I said, Ellen's going to kind of walk us through the background and the recommendation, and then the contract is before you for consideration.
Thank you, Pat. The impetus for tonight's recommendation is indeed the fact that Alpha Media is getting very close to opening at Gurnee Mills. At this point, it looks like probably mid-February is the target. Oh, how are we now? No? Okay. Okay. The four stations, XLC, Will Rock 95, LIP, and KRS are in the final stages of construction between Burlington and Floor and Decor in those spaces in that underutilized section of the mall. They're looking fantastic. Even back before Thanksgiving, they were really taking shape. Each station has its own window fully visible to passersby, and then, of course, the show court outside will be enlivened with events and concerts. So the new activity energizes that north end of the mall, which we all know is a good thing. The village board recognized the value in that and was very instrumental in making this all happen. So as part of that, a commitment was made by Alpha Media to provide advertising and promotions, which we are now gearing up, and that's the reason for this contract, to take full advantage of. So the trade agreement that we engaged in with Alpha negotiates a weekly live radio show on XLC, which we will brand as Gurnee's Got It, featuring things to do, businesses to visit, and people to know in Gurnee. A monthly spot bank of 40 pre-recorded commercials, 30, 60 seconds, which can air on any of the stations, whichever ones we choose. A commitment to host at least 32 concerts and events at Gurnee Mills, which is a figure that they fully expect to exceed. And then finally, an 11-week run of commercials to be aired on 24 stations throughout the Midwest. So with all of these opportunities available to us, we determined the time was probably right to engage professional services to make sure that we were taking full advantage of these. A communications subcommittee of 3, small but mighty, Trustee Hood, Jack Linehan, and myself, interviewed 3 firms. Sorry, we interviewed 4 firms, actually, requested proposals from 3. We started out, there were 5 that came to our attention. One of them just wasn't appropriate. 4 we talked to, and then really got 3 very excellent proposals from firms that were very different in their approach, all of which I think would have done a great job for us, but we were very pleased to bring forward a recommendation. It was a tough choice, but Lynn Granstrom is a Gurnee resident. So she is principal of Lynn G. Designs. She has deep roots in this community. I'm sure many of you know her and know her family. She provides art direction and graphic design to large corporate clients like University of Chicago, Elmhurst College, North Shore University Health Systems, Abbott, AbbVie, Allstate, Baxter, Siemens. So she has quite a resume, but in amongst all of those, she also has a few of our own very small businesses as her clients. So she's got a jump start. For this particular contract, Lynn is collaborating with Molly Wolf. Molly is an award-winning writer who specializes in health, academic, and business content. She currently is the Senior Communications Specialist for University of Chicago Medicine. Previously an entertainment writer for two different large conglomerates, the Times of Northwest Indiana. She also had a weekly radio spot that she did for them, which will come in handy. And she was a syndicated columnist covering events and things going on in the suburbs in Chicago for 1,200 papers nationwide. So Molly and Lynn come to us with a lot of experience, but also the local flavor that we think will really make this shine. One of the first tasks that we'll be taking on is planning a 6-month media calendar, which will be themed around all of our radio, our print, our social, will all coalesce with the same message so that we're in sync and maximizing our benefit. The weekly show on XLC is certainly the centerpiece, no doubt about that. It will be aired live during the prime 7 to 9 a.m. morning drive time when listenership is very high. It'll be interactive. Listeners can call in and engage with our guests, ask questions. So we're really planning for 15 to 20 minutes each week of live airtime. You know, you can't buy that kind of, I mean, you can, but it's very expensive, buy that kind of exposure. So we're very excited about that. But with a listenership across Lake County, not just Gurnee, our challenge is to make that content, relevant to anyone who's listening, not just our residents, but yet obviously make that connection back to Gurnee businesses. So as an example of how we might accomplish that, maybe for instance, in February, you feature local chefs talking about Valentine's Day and how to make a meal, but then you tie that to restaurant week. March is staycations, spring break. April, we could do tax time, how to spend your tax refund in Gurnee, but pair that with some local tax preparation tips, things like that. So one of the things that I guess social media makes particularly clear to us is that authenticity sells. So what's nice about the radio program is it allows us to do that. We can provide this relevant content, but yet be promoting our local businesses. So in addition to the live radio show, we'll support that with graphic ads every day, every week, social media posts that'll be tying into that message, and then also driving traffic to our partners' pages. We will be able to invite into the studio with us any of our partners that we choose to, local businesses, any of our governmental partners. It's really at our discretion. So as with everything we do, those partnerships are what make it happen. And a group of us has been meeting, Visit Lake County, Simon, Alpha Media, and the Village, and Trustee O'Brien has participated in that, thank you, really to drive toward the open. Since November, we've been talking about how to open, when to open, how we're all going to promote this. You'll see details to come from us for an event probably in mid-February that involves tours, not only for you, but for the public to really see the stations up close and personal. So I think that will be a nice kickoff. And we anticipate starting this contract by certainly executing right away and getting started as soon as Alpha Media opens. So with that, I certainly appreciate this is a new approach for us, but I think it brings together much of the many goals that we've been talking about for quite some time. We can take advantage of some great advertising, benefit our local businesses as well as our large tourism attractions. It kind of does it all in one package. So I appreciate your consideration of a relatively new approach. Lynn Granstrom is in the audience tonight to answer questions, and with that, we'll open it to the board for questions. Thank you.
Well, this is fantastic. This kind of started because we didn't want to squander our advertising that we got as part of the incentive package with the mills and Alpha Media, and we have talked several times about having a communications calendar, but it's really expertise we don't have in-house, although phenomenal job has been done by staff to date with Gurnee's Got It and Facebook and that, but this steps it up, takes advantage of the package. So it is something that we don't normally do. So questions from the trustees? Thank you, Tom, for serving on it. Go ahead, Tom Hood.
Just a comment. I just enjoyed Jack and Ellen's opening my eyes to maybe I'm not the big advertising person from the village. It's kind of like we do our our basic stuff, do it well, police, fire, but we need to connect with our community. So I think it's a great opportunity for transparency, offering something to our businesses that we can show that there's a direct, we're investing in you. We can use that saying that we have police and fire, and they say, yeah, every business or every community has that. And not every community can offer radio spots and investments in their village. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and I think it also provides an opportunity. I think our staff is stretched thin in this area at times, and I think that we need the additional expertise to provide some help where we can provide them the direction and make sure that they get the proper messaging from our staff, but not to have to do every last detail, because I think we would miss out on the opportunity. So I think it's a great opportunity to hire Lynn and to help us through this. So.
Thank you.
Other questions? This is a really comprehensive proposal. I like all the ideas, just like the ideas you have in here are great, so.
I think it's great.
Trustee Garner?
It's going to be a great addition to that end of the mall, which has been long awaited, and so I'm excited to see the results.
Thank you. We are too.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve?
So
Oh,
moved.
I'm sorry. Okay, wait. I already called for the motion.
Okay.
I'll call for discussion. I have a motion
So moved.
from Trustee Garner, second from Trustee Ross. Discussion, Trustee Thorstensen?
Just a couple of quick things. So how many times did it say that we will be using that stage?
Minimum of 32. When we talk to Alpha Media's management, they are pretty confident it could get certainly over 50 and maybe much higher than that. So as an example, we've started to bat around some ideas. One of the right off the bat, I think, when there are bands in town for a concert downtown, a lot of times since they've made the effort to get to Chicago or Milwaukee, they want to add another venue while they're here, and so the radio stations can pull them in to Gurnee Mills for a quick mini concert, maybe on a Friday night for an hour or something. So little mini concerts like that. But then talking with Maureen and her team at Visit Lake County, we're starting to talk about pop-up events, like a pop-up beer garden or a crafters show or things that we could just tie in. Once we get this media calendar set, the possibilities are really endless about how we can add our own events. So I think it's, the contractual agreement is 32, but I would be incredibly surprised if we don't exceed 50
And that's annually.
annually. And this agreement is for 3 years on the recurring, the radio show, the spots, the events are 3 years. The Midwest markets is a one-time 11-week. Otherwise, it's the 3 years.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you.
Must have missed the tie-in to Visit Lake County, but I made a note on that, so I'm thrilled we've got that in there. And of course, I'm already thinking of our farmers market.
Absolutely. So Maureen and her team, obviously, as you can imagine, our partnership is so tight with them. They've agreed to take over basically 1 week of the month and just promote tourism in Lake County with hopefully no emphasis on Gurnee, but it all helps the region. And so we're thrilled that they're doing that. And then we will also defer to her on that 11-week run. Which markets, what the message is. It's a great way to get a lot more done by leveraging our partners.
Fantastic, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Hood,
Yes.
Thorstensen,
Yes.
Ross,
Aye.
Garner,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. Welcome to the team.
Great, thank you.
Good job. All right, item number 2, approval of ordinance 2020-03, amending Chapter 46 and other provisions of the Gurnee Municipal Code by adding sections concerning cannabis possession and other cannabis-related offenses.
Sure. So you had a memo from Police Chief Smith on this. As you know, Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, effective January 1st, 2020. So we need to update the municipal code to be in sync with state regulations. Previously, the municipal code prohibited cannabis possession. Obviously, that is no longer up to date. So Police Department worked with Attorney Winter on this. The ordinance provides some definitions. It all mirrors the state statutes, state regulations, and then has the sections and some fines laid out. Fines, for example, regarding obviously no possession for those under 21, can't be smoked in public or other prohibited places, can't be given it to people under 21. So those restrictions are within the state statute. We just need to put those in the municipal code. At the same time, the police department is working through its fine schedule currently, but they're proposing with this update to increase the minimum fines from $100 to $200, and then $200 to $300 if paid beyond 35 days. So a little bit of a bump. This will help. Obviously, we know the police department is going to incur some additional expenses enforcing the new legislation, so this will help offset some of that. And as I said, they're also working through a comprehensive update to their fines, which they'll be bringing forward to the village board at a future date. But since we were amending these sections of the code, they figured they would address the fines at the same time related to cannabis. So Sean Gaylor, our crime prevention technician from the police department, is here tonight if there's any specific questions about it. But like I said, it's just bringing our code into conformity with state statute.
All right, questions from the trustees or questions for Sean?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion from trustee Balmas, second from trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
6 aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, Sean, for your work on this. All right, item number 3, approval of awarding the police department building automation systems upgrade project to the low bidder Trane Inc. at a cost of $39,500.
Sure. Another memo from Chief Smith. Included in this year's budget was funding to upgrade the system that controls the HVAC at the police department. As you know, that facility is occupied 24/7, 365, so keeping it comfortable for those that are in it, right? We want to be able to accomplish that. The current system in place that controls the HVAC is original to the building, so it's 17 years old. It's a single workstation that a person must go to. Obviously, being that old, it's getting harder and harder to find parts, and there are a couple pieces of the system that are currently down. So as this was budgeted for, the department set out to find an upgrade to the system, worked with J.J. Henderson on this, spoke with Trane. They had recommended an upgrade to the latest control system, which is the Tracer SC Plus web-based system. Priced that out for us. We also went out and talked to a couple of different firms to see what they offered as far as an automation or updated control system, and received pricing from them. The pricing, we received 2 additional bids. Those were both higher than what Trane had quoted, being that it's all Trane equipment, so we've worked with since the get-go. The department is recommending to move forward with Trane at the $39,500. And again, this will update the system. You'll be able to, it'll be web-based. You'll be able to access it from your mobile device, any computer within the building. So you could be off-site, get in there and then make the necessary adjustments versus just having one single point. And then obviously brings a 17-year-old system up to date.
Questions? Trustee O'Brien?
Just curious if it's going to have any built-in AI or something like that so it can plan for saving energy perhaps in the future?
Our Director of Support Services, John Peterson, who's in charge of the facility, is shaking his head yes.
Yes, there is functionality for analytics, and it's a 24-hour facility, so there aren't times when it's going to be shut down. We'll be able to save money during off hours, if you will, but it does have that functionality.
Thank you.
Other questions? Trustee Garner?
This sounds like we're putting in a new automation system on an old HVAC system. Is that the case? And how does that work?
It's a new control system. There's components throughout the building that have been updated as they've failed throughout the years. But the older system doesn't really have the knowledge to talk to the components the way it should to make it fully operational. This will make that happen.
So My question, I guess, is how old is the HVAC system? And when will we be up for a new one?
So, it's 17 years old.
Okay. How long do they last?
It depends on the different components. You know, there's boilers and air handlers and chillers, and each one has its own life expectancy. They're all well maintained currently.
And there's been replacements along the way. I mean, we've replaced some condensers, they've done some work in the boiler system, so those components inside have been touched or replaced in the last 17 years. It's the system that controls them that hasn't been touched.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is if over time you can replace the HVAC components to catch up with the automation system.
And that's not an all or one. I mean, this is an all or nothing replacement. Those, as you said, are components. You can do those piecemeal as they go down, so.
I'm just making sure we're not putting new wine in old wineskins.
Good analogy.
Thank you.
Greg's a preacher.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from trustee Balmas, second from trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
6 ayes.
Motion carries. To go along with that, item 4 is approval of entering into a scheduled support agreement with Trane at an annual cost of $8,164.
Yeah, so this goes along with updating the control system. So since this will be the first year on the new system, Trane does offer a scheduled support agreement. This agreement includes 6 on-site inspections, ongoing system support, remote inspections, software upgrades, alarm notification, discounted labor and parts, and then ongoing training for staff regarding the new system. So it covers 71 different pieces of HVAC equipment that is over there. The biggest advantage really is Trane being able to remotely access the department's HVAC system when there's an issue. In the past, we've had to have a tech come out on site. Now they'll be able to log in remotely and see what the system's doing and hopefully fix it that way versus having to have someone actually physically on site. So going forward, we're hoping we can pull down the amount of service that's covered under this support agreement, but given that it's the first year and a new system to us, the department felt that the amount included in here was reasonable and gave them a sense of comfort, so it's for you for consideration.
So it's basically a one-year thing?
One-year deal
Okay.
at this point.
Any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
6 ayes.
All right, motion carries. Item number 5, approval of awarding the Bittersweet Golf Course Phase 1 tree removal project to Monster Tree Service of Lake County at a cost not to exceed $50,000.
Yeah, we've talked about this a couple times at this point. As you know, we moved some money around to get going on some projects out at the golf course. So Brad Anderson, who's the head of grounds out there, has been working in conjunction with a couple of our arborists at Public Works to identify hazardous trees that are a safety hazard. For this first phase, it's going to be removing those that are obviously in most need of being removed from the property. So they had about 37 trees that will be removed. There's more trees that need to be done than this, but these are the highest priority. We did reach out to 3 separate companies, received bids. Public Works reviewed them, felt we getting the most work out of Monster for the $50,000. The company we worked with before, based here out of Gurnee, so they have prior experience with them. Obviously, being a golf course, you need someone that's going to be a little more careful out there than your run-of-the-mill tree service, because it's not just going to be dropping stuff wherever they want. We got to be careful not to damage the property where Brad and his crew have to go back and fix it. So, recommended Monster. Public Works has been working. You may have noticed along Almond there, we cut a path into the golf course, so right across from the clubhouse there to be able to access it. The biggest challenge with this, obviously, will be that they can't start the work until the ground freezes, and you've seen how the weather's been so far this this winter season. So we're hoping we get a cold spell here where the ground will get frozen, they can get in there and get this work done. Obviously, future phases will involve safety trimming and then finally removing trees that are aesthetically not pleasing, but this is the biggest priority at this point. So anything beyond this will be included in next year's budget proposal for your consideration.
Yeah, from a safety perspective, we walked the course. These trees need to come down. So questions? We talked about this a few weeks ago. All right.
Make
do
a
I have
motion to approve.
Second.
motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee Thorstensen. Roll call, please.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
6-0.
All right, motion carries. We'll move on to public comment. And I'll just remind you that the rules for 2020 haven't changed from 2019. If you make a comment, we don't discuss, we don't debate. It's not a conversation, but you're more than welcome to state your name at the microphone and address the board.
Hello, Happy New Year to you all. I hope you guys had a wonderful holidays with your families. My name is Sarah Crawford, and it has now been exactly a year that I've been attending these meetings and begging you, the mayors and trustees, to protect my family and other Gurnee residents from the ETO admissions. Frankly, I'm disappointed that I still have to be coming to these meetings a whole year later. I'm disappointed that tonight I'm missing putting my daughters to bed because instead I feel like I need to be here speaking to all of you and asking you to protect my daughters from a higher risk of getting breast cancer and other cancers. The first point I would like to speak about is since the last Village of Gurnee board meeting that I attended back on December 2nd, we have continued to collect signatures from Lake County residents asking them to support our Home Rule Authority petition. Back then, we had just over 1,100 signatures. Now, just a month later, we have over 2,600 signatures. Once again, we would like to request that Gurnee exercise its home rule authority and pass the nuisance ordinance to end ETO admissions in the Village of Gurnee to not only protect Gurnee residents, but to protect all of Lake County residents from this poisonous gas. This here is your copy for your review. Also, as we mentioned back in December, we have a legal memo from our attorney that includes a legal analysis of home rule, and we'd be happy to share it with any of you that are interested. The second point I would like to speak about is the high air monitoring results near Vantage back on November 13th and 14th. I'm sure you all know the measurements, but I will reiterate them. It was 5.29 micrograms per cubic meter and 8.86 micrograms per cubic meter. Those are the highest readings that we have received yet around Vantage so far. And Vantage has already installed their control equipment that is supposed to scrub the air clean of this poison. So then how, just how, are we getting these high readings near Vantage? What about their control equipment is not working? What's not working, you guys? Is it the fugitive emissions? Is it the controls? Something's not working. And as a parent, this is terrifying. I read that the village called both Gurnee School District and Vantage about these incredibly high test results. And I'm curious, what actions did you put in place with Spalding School to protect all of the kindergartners, first graders, second graders, and teachers that are breathing in this poisonous gas every day? How are you guys going to protect them? I know that this is in this forum, you're not going to answer me back, but I need you to think about those precious children that they are breathing in this toxic ETO emissions every day since they are less than half a mile from Vantage. The third point I would like to make is that I have had multiple conversations with different parents who live in Gurnee that are now moving out of Gurnee because the ETO admissions issue has not been resolved. There are families that have newborns or young children or older children, and they're not willing to wait around and see if this situation is going to get resolved or not. They told me that they don't feel like Gurnee is a safe place to raise a family. I grew up in Gurnee my whole life, and before this issue was brought into light, I would have said, I love living in Gurnee. Of course it's a great place to raise your family. But that reality is changing, Mayor and trustees. The perception of Gurnee as a safe place to raise a family is changing because of these cancer-causing admissions that are being admitted into our air every day. Therefore, I am asking you to exercise home rule authority to not only protect my family, but also to protect Gurnee's reputation as a wonderful place to raise a family. The last point I would like to remind you all is that I personally emailed all of you back in November, and again, I sent an email last week to invite you to our Stop ETO information session, where Dr. Buchanan will be presenting her findings on the blood study that she conducted back in August 2019, this Sunday, January 12th, at the Warren Newport Library. I truly hope to see each one of you there so that you can learn more about the science of how ETO admissions are endangering Lake County residents. Currently, Waukegan aldermen and Lake County board members have already emailed me back to let me know they're attending, so I hope you guys can attend too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm excited about what you were saying about Gurnee Mills. I'm hoping that we can take advantage of all those really great events with our families.
Ma'am, you need to state your name, please, and
my
address
name is
us.
Liz Dorman.
What is it?
Liz Dorman. Over a year ago, this board discovered that Vantage is emitting a Class 1 carcinogen into the air at alarming levels. A year ago, 4 of our family members decided not to move near us after hearing about ETO in our community. A year ago, I did not have breast cancer. On Friday, I had a double mastectomy, and I am here today, now, because it's the right thing to do, to beg you guys to use home rule to stop this. ETO has been a known Class 1 human carcinogen and mutagen for over 30 years. Vantage has been making a conscious decision to poison the air without regard to our well-being. Vantage's corporate values are clearly not in line with Gurnee. They should not be near our homes, our schools, our daycare, and we can do better than Gurnee being known for our GoFundMe pages. Our family would love to move and not be breathing ETO. But how do I morally justify selling my house to someone who will be in the same position as I am today? If we were to walk away from our home, that's our only other option right now. Never in a million years would I have thought that we would be here making these decisions, but we are, we have to, and they are hard, and we need to face it. My children know that if someone is being bullied or in pain, they are never to stand idly by and watch it happen. We cannot stand idly by while Vantage is being a bully to our community. They need to be stopped. We need you, our elected officials, to stand firm and let Vantage know that harming even one resident is not okay, that the damage that they have already done will be seen for generations. One of my doctors said that the worst thing that you can do when dealing with cancer is to wait. We must stop waiting. Had we stopped a year ago, maybe I wouldn't have cancer today. I may never know. But no amount of ETO is safe. Standing together, we can be strong, we can be brave, and we can have no regrets. Use the tools that you've been given to establish home rule. Now is the time to begin to make this right, because cancer, it doesn't wait.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarai Thornton, and I've been a resident of Gurnee for 10 years. I'm asking you to exercise home rule authority and pass a nuisance ordinance embedding ethylene oxide from our community to keep us and yourselves safe. The youngest members of your constituency are most at risk and are getting sick at alarming rates. Last month, I took my 6-year-old daughter to her pediatrician for a follow-up on a resolving ear infection. This is my job as her parent, to ensure her well-being both in the short term and in the long term. During the consultation, I asked her doctor if she was aware of the risks associated with ETO exposure in our area. She acknowledged that she was, and I followed up and asked if she was aware of any testing that she could order in order to better understand what level of exposure my little girl may be exposed to. She indicated that she wasn't aware of this, but she would look into it further. She also elaborated that she had already reached out to the health department after becoming alarmed at the high incidences of pediatric cancer in her practice. I commented, hoping that she would pacify my worry, that it seems like we're living in Cancer Valley. She nodded in agreement. My baby's pediatrician nodded in agreement that we're living in Cancer Valley. You all can do something about this. Please exercise home rule. Do something. Gurnee Mills will be there, but there's not going to be anybody to come and watch all of these wonderful concerts if we're all waiting for our next chemo appointment. Do something now. Let's do something now so that we can save yourselves, save us. This is your job. I can only do so much for my 6-year-old. Please, exercise home rule authority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Henning. I'm a concerned Gurnee citizen, wife, and mother, concerned about ethylene oxide, or ETO, emissions in Gurnee. The last time I spoke here was December 2nd. I let you know that my routine mammogram in mid-November showed a mass in my right breast. And because all of the area diagnostic testing facilities were full of other women needing further diagnostic tests for their abnormal mammograms, I could not get another appointment for further testing until December 27th. Because I am a Gurnee resident, having lived near Vantage for 25 years and being exposed to tens of thousands of pounds of ETO over the years, I spent the last 6 weeks of 2019, over the holidays, worrying if I would be diagnosed with breast cancer. I have wondered if any of you worried about me in this past month. Did I cross your mind at all in the month that has passed? I am very relieved to report to you that further diagnostic testing showed the mass in my breast was a collection of cysts. I am one of the lucky ones. Unfortunately, as we have just heard, there are others who are not so lucky. And I say I am one of the lucky ones, but that is for now. For now, I'm lucky because I've been breathing this in for decades. That could change. I or someone I love could get breast cancer. We know that it happens. I already have 2 neighbors who have breast cancer, and there are many incidences of leukemia as well, and many who have that cancer are children. Does it give you pause? Do you think of these children? Do you sleep at night knowing that ETO continues to poison the air that Gurnee citizens breathe? Perhaps some of you do not lie restless at night, since you yourselves are smokers and you choose to inhale carcinogens, but I do not make that choice. I, my family, and other Gurnee residents have no choice but to breathe in a Class 1 carcinogen, ETO. Yes, air monitoring testing has been done. Testing after Vantage Chemicals was allowed to install scrubbers last spring before the initial round of testing was commenced. Yet even after the scrubbers were installed, recent testing has captured unacceptable amounts of ETO being released near Vantage. As Sarah has already mentioned, it's absolutely horrifying that on November 13th and 14th, very high levels of ETO were found at two locations. 2000 Belle Plaine Avenue in Gurnee, which is the location of Spalding Elementary School, and at the southwest corner of Northwestern and Keith Avenues, about a half-mile from Spalding. The levels, as you've heard, were 5.29 micrograms per cubic meter at Spalding and 8.86 micrograms per cubic meter a half-mile away from Spalding. Do you realize how much that is? The EPA's actionable level of ETO is 0.02 micrograms per cubic meter. The levels found at Spalding are 264 times that amount. And the levels found at Northwestern and Keith are 443 times that amount. Let me repeat that. 264 times and 443 times the actionable level. Yet no action has been taken. Since ETO is a mutagen and not just a carcinogen, we know that those young elementary school students who have no choice but to breathe the air at school every day of the week for 9 months of the year, that they could right now, as we speak, have damage to their bodies. Every day that goes by, they breathe in ETO, they are at greater risk. What is being done to protect the innocent children who attend Spalding School? Their teachers, the staff members, their administrators. What is being done to protect the residents who live nearby? You may want to reply to me that Vantage recently installed more emission controls to comply with the new law, limiting their emissions to 110 pounds per year. However, we do know that, how do we know that this new equipment will be effective? It doesn't seem that the controls that they've already put in place are effective because of the high emissions numbers that I already mentioned. We can't know for sure that the new equipment will be effective either. We would need continuous air monitoring around the facility. And who would do that? Where would that manpower come from? The Illinois EPA themselves said at the town hall meeting last fall at CLC that they don't have the manpower to do ongoing monitoring. Will Vantage? If so, what happens if there is a leak? Do they get fined? Do they get a slap on the wrist? What? And in the meantime, the ETO has leaked. It's out. There's nothing that can be done to rein it back in. I made that point at the CLC town hall. ETO emissions need to be banned from our community immediately. We should not have to wait any longer and lie awake at night wondering, when am I going to get that phone call? When will I hear that my neighbor or my neighbor's child has cancer? Gurnee is a home rule community. As a concerned citizen, wife, and mother, I ask you to exercise your home rule authority and ban ETO emissions in Gurnee. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh.
Good evening. My name is Yolanta Pamatlo, and I am also a Gurnee resident. And I, too, can't believe it's been a year, Sarah. So I am here to ask the Village of Gurnee to exercise home rule authority, as I've been present here before. It is a fundamental tenet of our system of governance that local authority is usually better positioned to determine the needs of the local populace. This is why local governments are given ultimate authority on most issues. Faraway state and federal governments are not in a better position to regulate Gurnee's local issues. We have 2 facilities that are emitting ethylene oxide in alarming quantities, And that is a local issue, local to Gurnee and local to Waukegan. Other parts of the state might not have the same issue, so we can't expect them to pass legislation that will protect us when they don't really care about the issue. Ethylene oxide, the recent legislation around ethylene oxide has shortcomings. Senate Bill 1852 and Senate Bill 1854 are not strong enough to fully protect Lake County residents from toxic ETO emissions and/or accidents, such as that leak that produced an 8.8. The only thing that explains that high value in the canister by Spalding, it's got to be a leak. Because if they're controlling emissions and they've got scrubbers, why else would you get a value of 8.8 or 5.56 right next to Spalding? So leaks cannot be controlled and accidents cannot be controlled. How are residents notified when a leak occurs? Who is going to call me in the middle of the night to say, Yolanta, 10,000 pounds just leaked from Vantage? Is there a notification system in our village where I'm going to get notified if something like that happens? Whether in Waukegan, a Medline, or Vantage, there is no notification system for residents. So what are the limitations of the existing legislation? It's a start, but it's not perfect. It does not include limits on emissions, first of all. It relies on the Illinois EPA to determine the emission limits, and this can vary based on politics, or this is all relegated by permits. It does not impose strictly defined financial penalties for ETO emission violations. If there is a leak of 10,000 pounds, for example, there's no financial penalty for Vantage to suddenly, get penalized for that. It relies on Medline and Vantage to voluntarily self-report emission data and to monitor their own emissions. There is absolutely nothing in Senate Bill 1854 for Vantage that requires air monitoring. There will be no canisters on the ground when the EPA and the Lake County Health Department ends their testing in January. There will be nothing further beyond that. The law does not require anything further. Now, as a resident of Gurnee, I find that incredibly discomforting to know that how will I know that Vantage is not leaking? How will I know that the emissions are properly being controlled? I'm at their mercy, at their honesty, but how will I don't feel comfortable at night. Not to mention, ethylene oxide is incredibly explosive. It is utilized to build thermobaric weapons. It is used in explosives. If that facility, God forbid, if that facility were to ever explode, it would be catastrophic in the community of Gurnee. East Gurnee, those homes that are right next door to that facility, the Spalding Elementary School, it would be catastrophic. We need to realize that as leaders of this community, you all are elected to represent our interests. You are public officials, you are public servants. We vote you in to represent our interests. You have thousands of people in Gurnee who do not want this gas emitted. We do not want Vantage to be emitting a known carcinogen and a known mutanogen into our air. The residents have spoken. They've been coming here for a year advocating and telling you this, but yet you're choosing to side with the business over people's interests. I don't know if Vantage votes, maybe they do as community members and they live in the community, they also vote, but I do think the majority, that in a democracy, the majority rules, and the majority does not want this gas in our community. Please exercise home rule authority, represent the people of Gurnee just the way that the village of Willowbrook represented the people of Willowbrook, and they did not want this gas in our community. We don't want it here either. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by trustee Thorstensen, second by trustee Balmas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.